Greetings and welcome back to the F.A.S.T.E.R podcast. Just give me 1 second. Oh yeah, this is perfect. Greetings and welcome back to the F.A.S.T.E.R podcast. I'm happy to have you here with us for another magnificent episode filled with gems for your safekeeping. I'm your host, Judas X, and I'm coming to you live from the RFP headquarters here in NYC. Whether this is your first time tapping in or you've already been a part of the Renaissance family, man, come on in, make yourself comfortable while we journey through this knowledge today together and enjoy the RFP experience. I know that time is the most valuable commodity that we own because it's the only thing that we can give that we can't get back. So I appreciate you for gifting me with your time today. And to kick off every episode, it's always very important for me to vocalize that here at the F.A.S.T.E.R podcast, we aspire to inspire until we expire. An abundance of blessings to Les Brown for supplying us with the only motto that we feel could encapsulate the very essence of this podcast. I personally believe that the distance between you and your higher self is just information. So the purpose of this podcast is to provide the listeners with innovative tools, perspectives, and ideologies to enable them to take a more proactive approach to challenges that we encounter on this journey called life. This is the third installment of the Universal Life Principle series, and as you know, I like to open every episode with a quote as it sets the tone for the current episode. The quote today is brought to you by none other than your co-host and guide throughout the episode, Judas Hendricks. And the quote goes, "It's important to wake up and remind yourself how many challenges you had to conquer in order to be where you are today. Sometimes we tend to forget the diamond that all that pressure made. Don't ever sell yourself short." Not gonna lie, that was actually pretty good. And a nice setup for the topic we're gonna cover today, which is self-limiting belief. So, last episode, we introduced the RFP Pyramid of Principles, which is a visual representation of the principles that I use to guide both myself and this podcast. The list of principles starting from the base of the structure is preparation, execution, resilience, excellence, and osmosis. We're still covering the execution principle, which is the second step up on the structure. And that principle states that a brilliant idea that lacks action is a wasted thought. So last episode, we covered the first pillar, which focuses on belief in order to give us the foundation that we need to tackle self-limiting beliefs, which we'll be covering today. When we covered beliefs, we noted the powerful implications on behavior, because remember, a belief is a deeply held attitude or assumption that we create about who we are, how the world works, what's possible, and what we're capable of accomplishing. And that there are two sides to the belief coin, faith and doubt. Faith fosters anticipation, doubt creates anxiety, and also the detriment of focusing on the wrong thing, because whatever you focus on amplifies. So now that we've explored beliefs and established a solid foundation on how belief impacts action, what are some self-limiting beliefs that you think that you have? I'll give you 2 seconds to think about it. So now that you've thought about it, think back to the time that you met a challenge that you thought was insurmountable, and then think about how you felt after you were able to triumph. Now look back at that story, and that is a microcosm of your life, where you're going to be met with challenges, and eventually you're going to overcome. It's just a cycle. And it's important to remember that we aren't born with perceived limits. These limits tend to stem from life experiences, culture, and the stories of others. And as a result, we begin to shrink our dreams and aspirations to fit into our current reality, while failing to realize that you can have more than you have now, because you can always become more than you currently are. With one step in a better direction, you can completely change your overall destination. The real key to unlimiting yourself is unlearning false assumptions. So often we don't accomplish what we plan to accomplish because we convince ourselves that we're not capable of doing the thing. Jim Kwik sums up self-limiting beliefs perfectly when he said, "If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. Your capabilities are not fixed. It's possible to learn anything." Price Pritchett explains that you have to give yourself permission to dream big and not allow yourself to be boxed in to your perceived constraints. Now, he does not dispute that there are limitations, but he emphasizes that your actual limitations are far beyond your artificial mental boundaries. And ironically enough, the real limits won't box you in, but the false limits that you carry around in your mind all day is a self-imposed prison. Jim Kwik breaks down self-limiting beliefs into 3 categories. Number 1. Just who I've been waiting to see, man. Come on and make yourself comfortable. Welcome to the Judas Juice Corner. It's your boy, Judas Hendricks, here to guide you throughout the episodes as per usual, because Dr. Who is throwing out all type of unnecessary scientific terms in this episode, so I'm here to make sure that you don't get lost in the sauce. And you see who he was quoting to open the show, right? I guess we both know who the real Renaissance man is. I know you're thinking it, so I'm just vocalizing it. But anyway, Jim Kwik is the founder of Kwik Brain Universe and the host of the #1 brain performance podcast known as Kwik Brain. He's the world's leading expert in speed reading, memory improvement, brain performance, and accelerated learning. When a childhood injury left him with learning challenges, he made it his life's mission to innovate strategies to dramatically enhance brain performance. Once he was able to triumph over his learning challenges, he dedicated the rest of his life to helping people unlock their true genius. And the book that we're leveraging today for this episode is a world-renowned bestseller that goes by the name Limitless. Upgrade your brain, learn anything faster, and unlock an exceptional life. The book is definitely a phenomenal read. I've already started to implement some of the techniques, such as the acronym F.A.S.T.E.R that you'll learn about later on in this episode, that is helping me to improve information retention. So if you're looking for brain function optimization, I definitely do recommend. Now back to the episode. A limiting mindset, where you entertain low ideas of yourself, your capabilities, what you deserve, and what's possible. Number 2, a limited motivation, where you lack the drive, purpose, or energy to take action. Number 3, a limiting methods, where you were taught or are acting on a process that is ineffective in producing the desired outcome that you want. Then he gave context around the categories and further explained that the mindset, which is the what, is synonymous with belief, and that is a deeply held belief, attitude, or assumption about yourself, your capabilities, what you deserve, and what you believe is possible. Number 2, the motivation is the why, the purpose for taking action, the energy required for someone to behave in a particular manner. Number 3, the method, which is the how, a specific way of accomplishing something, especially an orderly, logical, or systematic way of instructions. Although it's never particularly recommended to wait until you have everything mapped out before taking the first step. Jim then went on to highlight that there are 3 steps for minimizing self-limiting beliefs. Yes, I guess there's a common theme of 3 here. Yeah. Number 1, naming the self-limiting belief. Becoming aware of how you may be hindering yourself and spending the time identifying the source of that belief can be a powerful way to emancipate yourself from the mental box that you've created in your mind. Once you become privy to these beliefs, you can now see that they're not necessarily facts, but more opinions that you've created based on past experiences. Remember, past experiences do not dictate future outcomes. Number 2, get the facts. Your perception constructs your reality. That's why it's important for you to get the facts and objectively evaluate your self-limiting beliefs. When doing this, you should consider, are there any concrete evidence to support my belief, and are my recalls of the past experiences tainted by my automatic negative thoughts that makes the situation seems more than it actually was? And finally, number 3, creating a new belief. Replacing your old belief with a new belief is an instrumental part of the process. And when creating a new belief, the mindset is perfection is impossible. So the pursuit is always for improvement, because no one triumphs 100% of the time in critical situations. I've seen Michael Jordan miss free throws from replays, obviously. But, you get the idea. As long as you believe that your inner critic is your voice of truth and the wisest you, it's always going to dictate your actions. People often use phrases like, I know myself, that's just how I am, right before announcing a self-limiting belief. James Clear makes a very valid point about how negative thoughts isolate us and narrow the range of what we think we're capable of accomplishing. By allowing negative emotions to dictate our actions, we're operating in survival mode on a regular basis, and therefore we're restricted to a limited range of possibilities. Remember, everything starts in the mind, and sometimes you have to be a disaster before you can become a master. But it's like anything else. Repetition fosters improvement. So the more you tear down self-limiting beliefs, the easier it becomes. Battling negative thoughts is an ongoing process, and it's something that everyone experiences. But the important thing is how you react to these thoughts. Dr. Daniel Amen. Greetings and welcome back to the Judas Jewels Corner. As always, I'm here to give you that background information to make sure that you stay abreast with what's happening in the episode. Just wanted to give some quick background on Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a neuroscientist that aspires to end brain illnesses by innovating a revolution in brain health through education, products, and services. Dr. Amen is regarded as one of the most influential and visible experts in the realm of brain health and mental health. He currently practices as an adult and child psychiatrist and is the founder of the Amen Clinics in 11 locations across the US. He's a 12-time New York Times best-selling author, and the book that we're leveraging today for this episode is called Change Your Brain, change your life. The book is essentially a guide to optimize brain function through nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle changes. But let's be honest, man, with a last name like Amen, you gotta know what you're talking about. I find the story about the ants to be very interesting and something to keep top of mind when you're running into challenges and you face those negative thoughts. Now back to the episode. A clinical neuroscientist and author of the best-selling book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, talks about what he refers to as automatic negative thoughts, abbreviated as A.N.T.S. He tells the story in his book about him coming home late one particular night after a terrible day at the office. I'm sure we all can relate. Dealing with suicide patients and dysfunctional couples to find his kitchen filled with thousands of ants. Then the acronym came to him like a flash of genius. He realized that the kitchen was a visual representation of what the negative thoughts were doing to his patients. He emphasizes that some people struggle more than others when it comes to ants in different sections of their lives because ants are everywhere. He then said, there's never enough spray to get rid of them altogether, but eliminating ants from your life is an essential part of unlocking your brain. And it's difficult to prevent something that you don't even know is there. So I'm being very intentional about highlighting this piece because I think it's very important. Me personally, I keep a can of positive spray on me when I see my ants are getting out of control. Because I truly believe that it's difficult, if not impossible, to derive positive results from a negative mind and mindset. And like Shakespeare said, nothing is good or bad. Thinking is what makes it so. Said another way by Myron Golden, everything has two sides. You've never seen a one-sided slice of bread or a one-sided piece of paper. Time is often the element that's missing that's necessary for you to see the holistic picture. And I know I've been mentioning animals and insects all episode, and not to beat a dead horse, but it's the elephant effect. You're standing too close to the situation, and time gives you the distance you need in order to see the frame in its entirety. Personal example that I have of this happening to me was last year. I went to St. Kitts and I said, I'm going to start this podcast, right? Picked a particular place to stay, had some ideas. Had a situation, had to be relocated. During the process of being relocated, I was thinking the whole time, man, this is so crazy. I had this idea to go and do this thing, and now I'm being relocated. I'm going to have to try to figure this out. And man, as soon as we got to the next spot and I opened the door, I was like, yeah, this is it right here. This is the spot right here. And my niece was like, yo, uncle, why we didn't stay here from the start? I was like, all right, she co-signed? Nah, we live. Yeah, after Ava co-signed, I know we were good to go because she has good taste. So that's a perfect example of where I couldn't see the entirety of the picture in that instance. I needed some time to pass for me to get to the next place, for me to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I could definitely see this happening here. So sometimes the change that you've been avoiding is where you find everything you've been looking and praying for. Humans tend to gravitate to comfort. But I mean, who doesn't like to be comfortable? But we also know that growth starts where your comfort zone ends, because that's when you begin pushing your limits. Attempting a quantum leap, according to Dr. Pritchett, is navigating uncharted waters without a guide to follow. This is how you multiply your output and accomplish more in less time. There's an element of hip shooting involved in a quantum leap, never depending on having everything mapped out before taking actionable steps. You must be willing to tolerate ambiguity, confusion, and some element of chaos in your life while you adjust your game plan accordingly as you go. If you become too fixated on a step-by-step guide, even a minor inconvenience will seem insurmountable because it doesn't fit into the guide. Uneasiness is a predictable psychological reaction when a quantum leap is on the way. As it's always been said, when you do the thing that you fear, death of fear is certain. Courage is not the absence of fear and anxiety, it's proceeding in spite of those feelings. According to Myron, when you stop putting more faith in your limitations and more emphasis on your leverage, you'll start to experience a life of flow. Taking ownership of the result before you know the path is pivotal. Waiting until you have everything mapped out is a sure way to make minimal progress. Drafting an outline with some small actionable steps that you can execute on a daily basis is major key. As Les Brown once said, it's the start that stops most people. Don't let the start stop you. Now, once you have the draft plan to use as a measuring stick for your progress, you then need to determine what are the habits that you need to execute on a daily basis to get you to your desired outcome. But before we go any further, let's first take the time to think about what are habits. A habit is considered a regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. I want to emphasize that portion. One that is hard to give up. Small, simple steps repeated regularly leads to habit. Our habits are a core component of who we are. Numerous studies have shown that approximately 40 to 50% of what we do on a daily is a product of habits. Now, doing a quick eye test, that's approximately 50% of your life. That basically means that half of our lives are governed by what scientists refer to as automaticity. Yes, I definitely had to Google the pronunciation. Automaticity is the capacity for a cell to generate an action potential spontaneously without any external stimuli. Greetings and welcome back again to the Judas Jules Corner. Listen, I tried to talk this guy out of all of these scientific terms. I told him I don't think it's necessary, but the eyes have it. But when you hear the word automaticity, all you need to know is that it's the ability to perform a task effortlessly. I told this guy, I think this explanation would suffice, but you see what I got to deal with on a daily basis. So hopefully you found this explanation helpful. Now back to the episode. Basically saying, yeah, the cell could do this thing effortlessly. And just for further context, an action potential is a rapid sequence of changes in the voltage across a membrane, like you can see happening on the screen right now. I think James Clear summed it up perfectly when he said, the habits you repeat or don't repeat on a daily basis largely determine your health, wealth, and happiness. Knowing how to change your habits means confidently knowing how to manage your days, which makes it easier to maintain focus on the behaviors that have the highest impact. And that also allows you to reverse engineer the life that you want. The fact is, nothing beats action. This podcast is a perfect example. I learned way more actually trying stuff than when I went to doing the actual research to get the information. And half the time, it takes way less than you actually think to get started. And that's because wisdom is an action word, not a noun. Wisdom is the implementation of knowledge. Knowledge has no power until it's utilized. I bought this course to learn how to use my camera, and at the end of every practice session, the guy would say, please go out, make an effort, try these things that you learn in the videos. You're not going to learn until you actually do the thing. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, bro, I saw what you did. I understand what to do. I'm fine. Until I actually started practicing, and then I was like, oh, okay. I get it now. I see exactly what you're talking about. Because there's just some nuances that you can't put into words, and you can't experience that until you actually start doing the thing. Jim Kwik has this philosophy around learning, and he also has a quote that I think captures the essence of the idea perfectly. And the quote goes, your brain functions much like a parachute. It only works when it's open. When I heard that, I was like, because if you think about it, it's true. If you're closed-minded to an idea, it's hard to receive the information properly. Jim Kwik's philosophy uses the acronym F.A.S.T.E.R. He recommends using this philosophy anytime that you're learning new information. Now, the F is for forget, because assuming that you already know the information is a sure way to prevent you from receiving that information the correct way. The A is for act. When you learn something new, putting it into action is vital, because learning is not a spectator sport. That's how you transfer knowledge to wisdom. The S is for state. Our learning is state dependent. Your state is a current snapshot of your emotions. It is highly influenced by your thoughts, which is the psychology, and the physical condition of your body, which is the physiology. The T is for teach. If you want to cut your learning curve in half, learning with the intention to teach others is a sure way to do that. The E is for enter. We enter important things into our schedule and our calendar, such as work meetings or flights. So when you enter things into the calendar, it makes it more official and you're more likely to commit to learning. The R is for review. One of the best ways to reduce the effects of the forgetting curve is to recall what you've learned in spaced repetition. You are better able to retain information when you review that information in spaced out session. Now, I sincerely apologize for turning this into a science class, but just to drive the point home that you're capable of learning anything, I'd like to briefly touch on what is known as neuroplasticity. Our brains have the capability of neuroplasticity. Greetings and welcome back again to the Judas Jules Corner. Like I said last time, I told this guy we don't need all these scientific terms, so I'm just here to simplify that. Neuroplasticity simply means it's the brain's ability to adapt and change to new experiences. Very simple, to the point. Don't understand what this guy is talking about. That's why I'm here, to make sure that you don't get confused by what this guy is talking about. So neuroplasticity is just the brain's ability to change and adapt to new experiences. Now back to the episode, which simply means they can be shaped or changed by our actions or our environment. Your brain is always changing and molding itself into your environment and to meet the demands that you place on it. Neuroplasticity, also referred to as brain plasticity, means that every time you learn something new, your brain makes another synaptic connection. And each time this happens, your brain physically changes. It upgrades the hardware to incorporate your new level of mind. Neuroplasticity explains why anything is possible. Researchers hold that all brains are flexible, in that the complex webs of connected neurons can be rewired to form new connections. Plasticity clearly articulates that you're learning, and by default, your life is not fixed. You can be, do, have, and share in anything once you optimize and rewire your mind, which ultimately leads to a rewired thinking. There are no limitations to what you can accomplish when you apply and align the right mindset, motivation, and methods. The road to mastery is to learn, implement, repeat until you understand the mechanics so well that it becomes effortless. The best learning is done during the execution process. The name of the game is the faster you learn, the faster you earn. Like I said in the beginning, I personally believe that the distance between you and your higher self is just information. Everything you do on a daily basis, you had to learn. Some things faster than others, but the point is you had to learn. You have to be willing to be bad long enough until you get good. If you're consistent, you'll get over the learning curve, but that does not happen without continuous effort. And you know as well as I know that every time you commit to doing something good, you encounter a problem. But I'm here to let you know that that's just the universe testing you to see if you're serious. So don't get discouraged. Like we said earlier, problems are a necessary part of the growing process. Good intention is always followed by disruption. It's always as soon as you decide to do something. But bear in mind that things always seem to be way more challenging than they actually are when you don't yet know what to do. Some of the things that you may find challenging in your life right now may just be stemming from the fact that you didn't take the necessary time to learn in depth enough to be able to execute on the action. I'll tell you what's been a major challenge for me. Feeling the need to do something that I don't yet know how to do, and feeling that I need to do the thing before I actually learn how to do it. That's a sure recipe to feel overwhelmed, and I've done that quite a few times this week alone. But like I said earlier, when you get inspired with good intentions, it's always followed by disruption. Disruption and resistance is just part of the creative process. But that's when you pull out the plan that you've drawn up and you make notes. The fuel for human motivation is progress. And there's an unwritten rule that states that you have to eliminate in order to elevate. As you ascend, you must bear in mind that things that you did on a lower level, you can't do at a higher level, because it's counterintuitive to where you're trying to go. But when you think about sacrifice, it's important for you to have the right frame of reference. Some people think that sacrifice is relinquishing something that you want to hold on to, when in actuality, sacrifice is letting go of something of a lower nature so you can grab hold of something of a higher nature. You sacrifice some of the parties so you can study to get good grades. You sacrifice the fast food so you can improve your diet so you can be excess ready. Because each thing is on the opposite end of the spectrum and you can't do both and expect to get the outcome that you desire. Because, like we said earlier, input dictates output. Obviously, it's important to set deadlines, but you want to remain flexible so you don't rush into things unprepared like I did for the CPA exam. And listen, man, let me tell you, that exam is not taking any prisoners. If you're not ready, you're getting slaughtered. But when I saw my scores, it occurred to me, had I just prepared for another month, I could have passed those exams. But I allowed the deadline to force my hand. And that taught me a valuable lesson, that when pursuing your goals, it's important for you to exercise patience. And always be willing to incorporate flexibility for when life happens, so you don't compromise the execution of your plan or product just to meet a deadline. And you're never in competition with anyone but yourself. Don't waste time looking at your neighbor, because that person may be fighting battles that you just can't see. Don't let the misconception fool you, because comparison is the thief of joy. Mastery level at anything takes time and effort. A lot of the things that you can do now took more time and effort when you started out. But with repetition and actively trying to get better, these once difficult things became easy. All your days are connected. It's just one long sequence. So the objective is to ensure that you're doing the thing that you need to get better at more times than not, so the compound interest of good habits can accumulate. When you think about people who've been playing sports before they can barely walk, that's a lot of practice hours. And all of that counts, because no work is wasteful work. You're operating off a finite amount of energy throughout the day. So it's very important that you be super conservative about where you put this energy. It takes the same amount of energy to believe in yourself as it does to doubt yourself. People find it much easier to doubt their beliefs and believe their doubts. So the question I pose to you, if you knew that you couldn't fail, how would you approach your next aspiration? If you know for a fact that whatever endeavor that you undertook was going to be 100% successful, how would you pursue that endeavor? That's a question that Myron Golden posed in his book. And then he said, if you know for a fact that the next endeavor that you were going to undertake absolutely was going to be successful, you wouldn't care how long it took and you wouldn't care how much effort you had to put in, because you already knew exactly what was on the other side. And you wouldn't be timid about what you choose to pursue, because you already knew, hey, this thing is gonna work. Then he alludes to the fact that the real reason that's holding most people back is that they don't believe that the thing that they're working on is going to work. The belief is holding back their actions because, like we said earlier, belief dictates actions. I'm sure we're all familiar with that old saying, worrying about something makes it happen. The time spent worrying robs you of the energy that you need to do the thing that will prevent the negative outcome from occurring. And like Myron said, anxiety is wasting present energy worrying about a future undesirable outcome. No high energy source will ever flow to a low energy source. When taking on a new endeavor, breaking the large objective into much smaller pieces will do two things for you. One, it's going to make the task much more manageable. And two, it's going to allow you to build momentum as you complete these daily tasks and check them off your list. And once you get in that consistent groove, you begin to benefit from what Tony Robbins refers to as the science of momentum. The notion is that once you set an accomplishment in motion, you can keep it in motion with much less effort than if you were trying to accomplish something from a standing start. It's easier to keep momentum than to build momentum. The faster you learn, the faster you earn. It's just skill stacking, like the bookkeeper to the CPA to the CFO. It's just turning one talent into two. All work is beneficial in some form or fashion because all work works. Just like belief, work is a two-sided coin. One side is when you're working on the task, the other side is when the task is working on you. And apologies for bringing more scientific terms, but I just want to drive the point home that momentum is a physics principle. And that principle states that any object in motion will remain in motion and pick up speed and velocity unless acted on by an outside force. And another physics principle, which is inertia, which we can consider to be the flip side, is that any object at rest will remain at rest until acted on by an outside force. So if you have some momentum and you're doing something and it doesn't feel like it's working, trust me, it's working. It's just going to take some time for you to see the actual results. But never confuse busyness with productivity. It's important to recognize that all progress is not created equally. There's a gross misconception that busyness and productivity are the same thing. All progress is not movement. That's why it's important to put your efforts on the tasks that provide the highest returns for your inputs. Executing maximum efforts on things that produce little or no return is a sure way to exhaust yourself and finite resources. The objective is not just movement. The objective is incremental improvements to effortlessness, which is considered to be mastery. Come back to the Judas Jews Corner for the final time for this episode. It's really looking like I'll be assuming the responsibility to close the episodes going forward. But you know, as they say, the reward for good work is more work. I'd like to quickly recap some key points of the episode. Remember, you are responsible for your beliefs and you are the architect that constructs those beliefs that drive your perception, which help to shape your reality. It's often used as a defense mechanism to protect yourself from temporary failure, but you must be reminded that failure is the fuel for improvement. It's not something to shy away from. Also, be wary of your automatic negative thoughts that may be preventing you from taking the steps and doing the thing that you know needs to be done. Our habits are largely correlated with our wealth, health, and happiness, and due to automaticity, if you aren't careful, bad habits can erode all of your progress. And finally, neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to adapt and change to new experiences, which means you have the propensity to learn anything. It's an honor and a privilege to guide you throughout these episodes, and as always, it's very important to us that you leave the RFP experience with more than what you came with, so hopefully you found some value in the information that was shared here today. As the Jigger Man would say, you could have been anywhere else in the world today, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. And we know at the end of episode 3, the second installment of the Execution Life Principle. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one, and remember, the next time you find yourself in a valley, you will always rise from the ashes like a phoenix with a new set of skills to tackle the next obstacle that's on the horizon. They can't stop you, they can only hope to contain you. The only thing stopping you is you, so get out your own way. Until next time, man, continue elevating. We out of here.